I kind of pictured in my head 206 WRC, Total, Clarion, Silver, Gronholm, Pedizzi, that sort of thing. But I know that you're kind of thinking something a little bit different. You're kind of stepping away from the old 2000s WRC era and kind of going maybe towards like an R4, R5 body kit kind of spec. Is that right? Hello and welcome to Scuderia BlendLine. Welcome viewers old and new to this channel. If you're wondering who I am, then I'm Tom, and if you're wondering where Tal is, then he's just over there doing what he does best and fettling with his French hot hatch. Now, you might be wondering why I've suddenly come in. Well, we're just here to do a bit of a recap on essentially what Tal's done over the last 20 episodes of this build series. It's obviously a completely bespoke French hot hatchback with a bit of a twist, and we're here to sort of show you more. So if I bring Tal back in, he's literally just finished doing kind of a week's solid graft on finishing kind of, well, basically preparing the car for paint and getting it all ready. It's literally going for paint this afternoon.
Yes, correct, yeah.
So we'll come to that in a minute, but I suppose what I kind of need to do to people who may not have viewed the channel before is introduce the car, what the car is. It's obviously a Peugeot 206 shell. Yeah, the body shell itself is a 206 and it's going to be mounted on a Subaru floor. So a few people have been asking, what was the kind of inspiration behind that? What is the inspiration behind a car like this? It's obviously a really custom build, something completely different to anything else. What inspired it?
Well, I guess for any car enthusiast, you kind of dream of what would be your perfect car. Obviously, I grew up driving French hot hatchbacks, or it started off with literally 1.4 litre French cars. And I've always loved the way that the French cars handle and feel on the road. They're really light, and they're quite playful, and it's a shame that none of them have the power and performance that I think they deserve. Especially Peugeot, the Peugeot range don't have anything really at high power. So and then on the other hand, you've got four-wheel drive performance Japanese cars. Obviously a toss-up between something like an Evo or an Impreza, and I like the way that the Impreza has a low centre of gravity. The handling is just superb, and I think a combination of the two would be mega. So that's the inspiration behind this, really. Yeah, excellent.
So it is literally, the floor itself is, I'll bring the camera around now, the floor itself is a Subaru floor. So everything, all the mounting points for the suspension, it is literally Subaru. And if we kind of move back around to the front, obviously some viewers will have seen a lot of this already.
If you disregard the cut, obviously, in the roof, which is obvious, the roof's completely gone. There's actually only really one cut in the Subaru, and that's down the centre. So the front, basically all the way from the rear of the centre tunnel there, right to the front end, there's no cuts in the chassis.
Okay. Yeah. So that's some pretty impressive work, and you've basically done all of this yourself, haven't you? All the kind of the cutting, the floor. Yeah,
all the stuff that takes time I've done. As you can probably tell if you've watched the series before, I'm clearly not a welder. So our good friend Steve has come in and put the cage in properly, done the seat rails and things. So but I've done the time-consuming part. Yeah,
sure. And I mean, anyone who can who's seen the videos will know how much work has gone into all this, and we can kind of detail some of that later. But obviously, things like the roll cage, it's good to get that done.
I mean, the idea is to hopefully do some kind of competition, whether it be hill climb, sprints, or anything like that. So to get the stuff right that you need right for doing events is quite important.
Yeah, definitely. And we should add that this roll cage, obviously, it will, it's certified, all the tube circumferences and everything, diameters, they're
Yeah.
all correct for FIA, so we will be able to get a certificate on it, and that is the plan to do some. You heard it here first, to do some sprint racing or whatever. So yeah. You heard that. Excellent. So yeah, and then obviously the Peugeot side of things, that obviously didn't drop onto it, but you literally were able to kind of shorten the Subaru shell and floor and get the Peugeot to kind of drop more or less onto it, kind of like an old like RC car where you used to be able to drop a shell onto any body, and a little bit different.
Yeah, the most time consuming job on the whole build, I think, was probably trimming the Peugeot shell to accommodate. So basically, I had to get it somewhere near, and I could only finally tune it once the shell was on top of the Subaru chassis. So a lot of work's gone into making it as smooth a transition as possible. And we'll turn the car in a minute, but once it's painted and with the body kit on, no one will really know that it's had a merge. So
yeah, excellent. And you mentioned body kit there. Now is probably a reasonably good time to kind of wonder what you're going to do with it. Obviously, being a 206 kind of, well, WRX as you've called it, and as it's known in the YouTube series, I kind of pictured in my head 206 WRC, Total, Clarion, Silver, Gronholm, Pedizzi, that sort of thing. But I know that you're kind of thinking something a little bit different. You're kind of stepping away from the old 2000s WRC era and kind of going maybe towards like an R4, R5 body kit kind of spec. Is that right?
Yeah. I've had a lot of questions on how the car's going to look. I do have a relatively clear picture in my mind. There's obviously no visual representation of how that will look to anybody else, but think Fiesta R5, a little bit of Toyota and Hyundai put in there. Just imagine if Peugeot came back today with a car and it was a world car, it would look something like that. Obviously, we have a slightly dated rear window setup and lights, etc. But I think the mix between the sort of the more aggressive look and the roundness of the original Peugeot parts will be quite a nice combination. So yeah, that will all be built in house as well. So I'll video all of that and the process that we'll go into doing then.
Obviously, another fairly important part of any competition car build is obviously transmission, engine. We haven't really discussed, or you haven't discussed on the channel, what you're going to do engine-wise yet. I can see there's a lot of work gone into the back end to sort out your cooling. People have been asking about where you're going to mount your fuel cell, why the radiator's in the back, what engine you're going to run. Can you sort of fill us in on a few little bits that you know so far?
Yeah, what I do know. Obviously, the build series is marked as being a budget build, so
for sure,
bear that in mind. But the idea is to run original suspension, original driveline and gearbox to start with. The engine, however, I do want to build to sort of a higher power than, say, what comes out of a WRX. So I'm still thinking at sort of 380 mark. Obviously, that is borderline whether the other parts can handle that kind of power. So it would be like a conservative power figure to start with, but the engine will probably most likely be a built motor that's either a 2.1 or 2.3 litre. So yeah, that's the idea.
Okay, cool. And transmission, you're obviously thinking of sticking with a stock transmission.
Yeah, so to start with, I want to be able to marry that engine to the 5-speed manual.
Yeah. It's 5-speed, is it?
Yeah, so they are stronger than the 2.5s.
Yeah.
Slightly, but obviously going sequential or any other route at the moment is kind of probably out of my budget. So that'll be further down the road.
Yeah, cool. And then this sort of cooling setup in the back. So you've got the radiator. You will have seen if you've watched any of the episodes so far, or the later ones. The radiator sits. Is the bottom mounted on that? These two?
The space is actually so tight that the radiator actually goes right to the bottom.
Okay.
There, pretty much. I will like to say though, I've had quite a few comments of that people first see the car, they think this is the fuel cell. If you stand from the front, it kind of looks like some kind of weirdly mounted fuel cell. The reason why I have put the wheel there is purely down to space. This is the only way that the car can be set up, with having the radiator in the boot and the spare wheel.
So that the spare wheel literally slots straight into there?
Sits straight in, it'll be literally strapped around the top, and then it just about clears the radiator, which has a slight drop fall on it, but it basically takes up the entirety of the boot. And the pipe will obviously all run through that side.
And then so the pipe work that runs through the car is literally going through there. And where's it run? Have you decided where it's going to run, or is that still in development?
It's in development, but it will probably most likely run through the centre, inside the car, up through the top of the tunnel.
Okay.
So there'll be like a box that will run across the top of the tunnel, and that will house the sleeved pipes for the coolant and the fuel and brakes as well.
Yeah, good work.
Yeah.
So one thing that's obviously quite apparent looking at this is that two big holes cut in the side of, or one in the side of each rear wing. That's obviously to aid cooling, with the radiator being rear mounted. Until a few minutes ago off camera, I didn't actually realise quite exactly how this is going to work. It's quite ingenious. Tal, can you explain a little more about how you plan on allowing cool air into the back of the car to cool the radiator?
Yeah, sure. I basically robbed it off the Rallycross supercar setup. So the main cooling system will be through the quarter panels here, and if you can see, there's two holes inside the car. So they're cut to 100 to allow 100mm pipe. So the one will be from the quarter panel, and the other pipe will be through a knacker duct in the rear quarter windows. So the idea is to get twice the amount of air than you would just from having the side vents. And then if you walk around the back, and you can obviously see where the air will come in through here. There's been just some plates put in to guide the air so it doesn't get sucked back round, because you'll probably find at higher speeds, certainly, it will just swirl around and then get sucked back under the spare wheel carrier. So that's why those plates are in there. And then there'll be two big fans on the radiator actually that suck the air rather than push the air, because obviously you're getting cold air underneath that need to come out. And then there'll be some big vents cut in the boot lid to allow the hot air to come out. And the reason why it's so important to get the air in, and why so much effort's gone into to get the most capacity of air through, is if I do have a high horsepower engine, it's more than likely going to be a closed deck block which runs a lot hotter. So even than just being concerned about getting the cool air in from, say, not having the radiator on the front of the car, you have the added issue of having a hotter running engine. So it's important to get this bit right.
So moving to the inside of the car,
yeah.
One challenge that you obviously would have faced would be, you're quite tall for one thing.
Yeah.
Where you mount the seat. Obviously it's two cars in one. You've got one floor with a door space and windscreen space of a completely different car. So how did you mount, or how did you decide where to mount the steering column, the pedal base, obviously the seat base? That was obviously in an earlier episode. It must have taken a bit of engineering.
Not really. I mean, I'm building it for me, the car. So I'm basically the benchmark of where everything's going to go. So unless you're 6'4" and a bit, you're going to have issues, but it will be adjustable anyway. What I will say, I've had a couple of comments on the height of the door bars and the roll cage. And what I should explain is, obviously, if it was the Subaru shell with the B pillars, in fact, the Subaru probably comes to about there. So you have the door pillar. So you have such wide doors on a two-door, any two-door French car. Sure. Anyone will know that the doors are just stupidly long. They're hard to park in car parks, etc. But that's why I managed to get such height on the bars and still have, because the idea is to. That's the important space you need when you're getting in and out of the car. That part there, it doesn't really matter how high it is on that part. So
yeah, sure. Yeah,
anyway, that's why they're there.
Okay.
And the seat rails are mounted quite far back, but that's just because I'm so tall. And the steering column mount is basically set up perfectly to be centered. So having the standard pedals, because I'm using the standard pedals, they're aligned slightly to the right, but not enough to be an issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that Tal's decided to, as we literally spin the car over, it's on a spit, which has obviously made it quite handy to fabricate, by the way. He's just going to show us the underside, so you can literally spin it 180 degrees in a matter of seconds, which is pretty handy for working underneath.
Yeah.
It's all stripped bare, but you've decided to put sill stands. So those of you who may not know what sill stands are, they're like A-frame stands that when you jack the car up, you can slip into these little tubes, and it makes it a little bit safer to work on. Obviously, if you're kind of jacking the car up in a service area or a pit or a paddock, it's important to be able to jack the car up and have guys work under it safely. So that's the reasoning behind that. But obviously quite a lot of engineering has to go into fitting that into the car and making it safe so that the chassis doesn't bend as soon as you put the sill stands underneath. So you've obviously done quite a bit of work, I can see, to put them in.
Yeah, it's all behind the scenes now. I put this plate cover on there, but if you do go back through the build series episodes, then you'll see what I've done. But yeah, the important thing is, I will say again, is to make sure they're strong enough if you do put them in, because if they do collapse and someone's underneath it, it's not really worth the risk. So,
no.
But yeah, quite a lot of work's gone in. You may be shocked at how far forward this stand is, or this tube is, in relation to the front and rear of the car. I don't know if you can probably get from that angle, but this one's as far forward as it can go. Majority of the weight is engine and gearbox, which is somewhere around here. And then there will be a fair bit of weight in the back, but having the sill stand here is integral to the fact that it was easier to fit it here, because if I show you where you could have fitted it, you would have to have completely cut away this area to get the tube mounted in the underside.
Sure. And
I didn't want to have to go through all the structural part of the rear part that holds basically the back of the arch together. So that's why it's slightly further forward than I would have liked, but yeah, it should be fine on the weight balance.
Anybody who's used to seeing Peugeots will be used to not seeing struts in the back of a car. So this is obviously quite different to see this kind of setup anyway with the rear suspension. You've done this for a reason. The rear suspension on the Peugeots is normally a little different. It's kind of basic. You're running with the Subaru style, so it's going to handle a lot better, hopefully. Yeah. And the way you fabricated the rear arches as well is obviously... Yeah, you've done a lot of work to go into that. So could you explain a little bit more about how you've done it and why?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons. The main thing is for clearance. If I ever want to put any longer travel suspension in, I can do that and not worry about having scrubbing issues. The car will be slightly wider than the standard Impreza width, so I have that to bear in mind as well. It also is a massive factor of structural strength, as in it ties the Peugeot body shell to the Subaru part by basically having them completely welded around. I put seam sealer over there to protect it now, but yeah, that's added a lot of strength to the rear turrets because they're quite vulnerable before. I will note as well that I would have reinforced the rear end a little bit more, but the fact that I have very little space with the setup in the back means that I can't. So it was important for me to get as much of the strength back into the car as I could at this part, basically tying it all together. So that's why I put these big arches on. And these are the arch liners, by the way. A lot of people ask me if that will be like the look of the rear end. No, it won't be. That's just the basically liner to mount the kit off. So yeah, obviously luckily I've retained the factory mounting point for the Peugeot bumper. So that's been a real help because that's really lightweight. I can keep that whole panel on the car, or that bracket, and it's got the factory mounting point bolts. So
it is cool to see so much Peugeot stuff still remains.
Yeah, you've got the VIN number obviously of the Peugeot on there,
and even the little Peugeot line as well, which will be quite cool.
Plenty of badges around.
Yes, indeed. We'll whiz round to the front. Similar amount of work has gone in to the front end of the car. Yeah. And you've got those similar mounting holes. So you said to me just now, again off camera, that you're going to mount, essentially it's going to be like a clip for your intercooler and lights, so it makes the engine and
it's going to be really basic, hopefully basic, and it will mean that I can take the whole front end off really quickly and expose the front of the engine if I need to get to it. So the only things that are going to be really mounted on the front bumper itself are the lights, the front unit as such will be the lights, the intercooler and the bumper. So it should be hopefully fairly lightweight, and I'll just use these brackets. As you can see, they've all got captain nuts on, same left and right, so there's plenty of option for making the frame to accommodate for all of that.
You've obviously reinforced the strut tops as well to allow for whatever might lay ahead competition wise. That's a good move now.
It's not massively thick plates, but it's just something there, and it will just help a little bit. I mean, I'm not going to do 20-foot gap jumps in it, hopefully, so well, we'll see. But the other important thing was, as you can see, is the front struts. It was important to get the strength back into the car because the front end's been cut off. There's quite a lot of strength lost in the front chassis rail. The engine subframe cradle bolts to that point here, so you can see how much of the car's been cut off. I've actually kept the crumple zone in, which will obviously be affected by that, but I wanted to keep those in there. But the idea of this is to keep the strength of the chassis rail.
There's obviously an enormous amount of work going on. Putting you on the spot here a little bit, but how many hours do you reckon so far, now it's at the point of painting, do you think you've put into it, roughly?
I can tell you exactly. Okay. I have kept count.
Okay.
Do you want to guess?
It's got to be like 200.
No, so I put into the total build has been just shy of 520 hours.
Okay.
About 60 hours of that has been stripping the two cars. Obviously I took quite a long time stripping down the Subaru, especially, as you'll see in video 1 and 2, I believe. That I wanted to keep everything intact. I didn't want to break any sensors, switches. I labelled up the I labelled up all the wiring so it'd be easily identifiable what everything is. Obviously all the parts are on the shear bolts, so a lot of time went into stripping that car. I'd say not so much in the Peugeot. I just completely gutted that and cut the body shell off it, but that was quite fun in its own way. But 520 hours, I'd say probably 450 on the body shell to get to this point of painting. So.
Yeah, no, well it certainly shows, and I think there's been a few comments about the state of your gloves as well.
Yes.
That's obviously been quite a
it's not the same pair of gloves.
I've even
wow.
We've got you a gift. Tal didn't expect this. We've got a new gift. That is a pair of well-proof gloves, so you can truly put them to the test.
Oh, superb.
So you can enjoy them.
Thank you, turn one.
I expect they'll last about one episode. So there we go. But no, it's been really interesting to come and have a look, see where you are. So the car is literally going for paint this afternoon, and when I say for paint, who's doing that?
Me.
There you go.
Staying for paint.
staying for paint. So it's literally, it's going to be turned around and painted here.
Yeah, I'm going to mask it up as soon as we're done here. So yeah. And
we'll reveal the colour choice shortly. So yeah.
Yeah, happy Christmas, everybody.
Have a good Christmas. Stay safe. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you don't already. It really helps us put together these videos. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, whatever you can. BlendLine really makes a difference when you do. So thanks for the follow.
Yeah,
give us a thumbs up, and yeah, see you soon.